would consider myself a Star Wars fan, so I'm gonna yell about my opinions on the internet. Hi, welcome to a video where I talk about Kenobi. But first, can I change up the decorations a bit? That took way longer than it should have. But now I can talk about Kenobi! So, I want to talk about Kenobi specifically, just because the show is just so... How do I put this? Unnecessary. The whole thing just feels like a low-effort attempt at a Star Wars project, which, I mean, that's exactly what it is. So, let's talk about why Kenobi is so unnecessary and why we gotta stop doing that. Stop making unnecessary shows. No one likes it. It's weird. And we don't like weird. So, let's start off with the glaringly obvious fact that we know pretty much every single second of this guy's life at this point. I mean, there was one gap of time where we weren't following him. We know he was on Tatooine protecting Luke. We knew what he was doing at the time, but we hadn't seen any of that. So obviously, we gotta make a show. But in the show, here are two things that we already know. One, Kenobi doesn't die, and two, he goes on to train Luke. I mean, at this point, he has a complete arc. There's no need for more storytelling about Kenobi as a character, right? Let me draw this out. Basically, let's say that this is Kenobi's character arc, right? Complete from this point where Qui-Gon dies to this point where he dies, right? And then, basically, what they're doing is saying, over here, remember when he was on Tatooine? We're gonna make a whole new story about that. And it just feels unnecessary because we already have this complete story. We don't need more. So, besides the fact that this adds nothing to the character because he's already been fleshed out and plenty of development has happened to him, right? It kind of ruins the original trilogy. Now, I say that very lightly because the original trilogy it's great and there isn't much that could ruin that, right? But this moment...
I've been waiting for you, Obi-Wan. We meet again at last. The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
Only a master of evil, Darth.
I mean, it's just so important to Darth Vader's character as a corrupted student who feels betrayed by his master. It also reflects this hatred and this feeling that the two characters have been dwelling on for almost 20 years, which is just greatly diminished by pushing all of it into a small confrontation on Mapuzo 9 years earlier. It just doesn't have the same effect. Now, another thing to bring up about this show is the writing. I mean, it feels like if you put every action movie ever into, like, an AI generator and got that, because all the lines are just like, he needs our help. We're gonna go help him. You could insert this kind of dialogue in any story and it would work because it's just so generic. I mean, every plot point of this show feels predictable, you know, and it just feels like we keep repeating the same thing of, oh no, Kenobi's gotta go do this, but oh no, there's this in the way. Obviously, that's the structure of a story. You have to have conflict in the story, but it could have been done in 2 episodes if you just condensed all the plot points into one plot point, you know? Because it just keeps repeating the same thing over and over again. It just feels like everyone is waiting for a point where Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader can have that
Now I am the master.
moment again, but you're not gonna get that in this show because they can't do that. They can't throw Kenobi into the position he was in 9 years. Going off and fighting Vader this early on just doesn't feel right. Now, there are some things that the show did right, I would say. I really enjoyed Reva's storyline, and I enjoyed learning more about the Inquisitors and how they interact with the Empire, right? But that just goes to show how unnecessary the show is, you know? Make a show about Inquisitors. Don't make it about Kenobi, a character we've seen before, and we know everything about this guy. We don't know much about the Inquisitors, right? So explore that more. Don't keep dwelling on Kenobi. Which brings me to self-reliance in movies, TV, any piece of media or content that's being created. Basically, what this show is doing is relying on the original trilogy and the prequels to make a story. It's unconfident in itself to be good on its own, so it uses Kenobi as a safety net, basically, to catch itself, because who isn't going to want to watch Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor, like, fight again with lightsabers? Like, I'll be honest, I did enjoy when they were fighting, because it's nice to see them on screen again together, and, like, I enjoy that. But at the same time, the overall story is just ruining the character, and it feels unnecessary. Imagine you have an Inquisitor show and the Kenobi show. Now, if Disney were to make the Inquisitor show instead of the Kenobi show, right, they would have the storylines about the Inquisitors and all these new things and characters, but they wouldn't get that safety net of having Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen back on screen, battling, bringing in way more people to watch it because they're excited to see characters they grew up with being on screen together again, right? But it feels like searching for something that you already have. Just making more and more of the same thing, and at this point, it feels unnecessary. So I've said a lot about why Kenobi is unnecessary as a show. It would have been better as something else, but why is this actually a bad thing? You know, why can't you just make an unnecessary show, you know? But I think that it's just diluting content. At this point, when you're pushing out that much amount of content, it dilutes everything that does come out, you know? So when you have something that is really good, it gets overshadowed and overlooked by something bigger. I think that there are plenty of good shows out there going on right now, and I think a lot of them go under the radar because they don't have huge characters in them, and they don't lean back on a franchise to save them. Okay, so the Kenobi show hasn't actually finished airing, so tomorrow I'm going to be watching the last episode of it, right? And we'll come back, give my final thoughts, and I don't know, maybe the last episode convinces me Kenobi isn't unnecessary. Okay, I am back, and I am sick. Okay, after watching episode 6, here are some things I can say. The show is still unnecessary, but I enjoyed episode 6. I think it was fun to watch. It was mainly just fighting, and the main fight was obviously between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan. Two characters which we know both don't die, so there's immediately no stakes to this fight. And they've already had their emotional confrontation earlier on, and they're still gonna have one later, so it doesn't really make sense, but it is cool. I think that the choreography was pretty good. It did, like, reflect a lot of, like, what's been going on in the show, but it just still feels unnecessary. The other main plotline is Reva trying to kill Luke, which she doesn't do, which is a good character development for her and stuff, and Obi-Wan and her have this conversation at the end, but it's still just driving home the point they should have made an Inquisitor show and not an Obi-Wan Kenobi show. Like, there's just no point to this show, and every part feels like, okay, they're fighting now. I wonder what's gonna happen. Oh, they both get away? Because there's one point where Kenobi says, before he goes into fighting, he says, like, one of us is going to die. I'm finishing this right now. And you automatically know that isn't true. And then you go in, and there's a part where he cuts off half of Vader's mask, and Vader is, like, down, right? He could have easily killed him. The only reason he doesn't is because he has to be alive for later, right? So it just feels like they've constricted themselves so much to this period of time in this one character that we already know everything about. Like, get Reva and make a show about her, you know? I just feel like it would have been much better if they had spent their time and money elsewhere. But it's Disney, so they have infinite time and money, and I'm sure there will be an Inquisitor show in the future. With that being said, I think Kenobi is unnecessary. A video essay on a channel mainly meant for doing stupid stuff? Crazy, right? This is just for me to write down my thoughts because no one's gonna see this. But hey, that was pretty fun to do. I like that. See you later.